Hello, my name is Stephen Ball. I'm the staff organist and director of outreach for the Historic Organ Restoration Committee, which is a nonprofit corporation chartered by the state of New Jersey to restore both pipe organs here in historic Boardwalk Hall. I'm seated at the console of the world's largest musical instrument. This instrument hasn't fully functioned since 1944. That was the year a hurricane hit the island. It did a lot of damage to the building, and the organ hasn't fully operated since. We're working on restoring the organ the next 10 years, $16 million. We are now about 4 years into that process, and what you'll hear for this recording is approximately a quarter of the instrument. It has every idea of organ building that could be fit into a single instrument that was known at that time. It represents the pinnacle of the evolution of the 4,000 years or so of history of the instrument, and is truly the first organ of the organ reform movement. The smallest being the 10th diapason. They all have different constructions. You'll hear many dead notes. The dead notes are due to the fact that we're still running on original leather throughout most of this part of the organ. Building up the principal chorus, which is really what creates such a thrilling effect. So you have the small chorus mixture, and building up a small chorus from 16 foot. That's only 4 stops in huge. If I just change the stops that I've chosen, the 16, 8, 4, and mixture, much more robust chorus. Continuing around the musical tour of the organ, the Grand Great, which is a very interesting division. These 10 ranks are all extensions of the pedal organ. Tend to get very hot because they're right on top of the static line of the blowers, so the tuning changes a lot during programs. We have the tibia clausa that I mentioned earlier, which is exposed but does trem very well. There's a tibia plana. A string on 30 inches of air, that's double languid. It's called the Dulcian. The Dulcian is the stop that goes down to down to 64 feet in its lower compass. I'm often asked about the extensions of the keyboard and whether or not I find them useful. Example of the trombone. There's also a small trumpet chorus. And the most famous inhabitant of the Grand Great, which is the world's loudest organ stop, the Grand Ophicleide. Great solo is a low pressure division comparatively. It's all on 15 inches of air pressure. You have all sorts of principals and flutes. I mentioned there were 3 diapasons earlier. There's also a lovely pair of gums horns. Small set of strings. Everything is unified all the way up to a 1/4 foot. And there's an entire separate reed chorus as well. Just a good idea of some of the color reeds. Again, many dead notes. This is all original. The left pedal, we only have some stops available right now. There's a diapason in the left pedal, number 12. And also the equivalent string, as we've seen over here on the right side with a 30-inch violin. And the last stop in the organ to be voiced. Most interesting stuff, I think, for our listeners of what's playing on the left side now is the string organ. it's impossible to fully demonstrate this, but just to show you briefly the cellos. The larger scale violins. And the small scale violins. As you hear, it's expressive as well, which is a major change in my world. Adding the strings from the solo organ. Final division we haven't discussed so far that's playing is the solo organ. There are two major diapasons, the center, and also its companion, number 79, which is part of the mixture, the large chorus mixture, which Nathan just tuned. It's a 16-foot mixture. Strings, as you heard earlier in chorus. The French horn here was originally housed next to the second French horn in the great solo. Between 2/3 in the great solo used to be here, which is the reason why the specification is out of order. That will eventually switch itself back. And then we have, of course, the reed chorus. The reed chorus is very interesting in the solo because it's non-sequential. None of the tabs are in order of volume. The smallest trumpet. We do have some tuning problems still. And it gets excessively brighter. That's the English post horn. And then the large version of the post horn is called the bugle. The largest reed is the second of the 100-inch reeds that's playing. The stops that people want to hear are always usually the 100-inch and the 64-foot, most famously. And we're the only organ in the world to have a 42 2/3, which means we have a 128-foot resultant. So if you want to have a demonstration of the 64-foot,